Yeah, we will. You live now, Kenny?
Yes. Just let me know whenever you get shared around, and we'll bring them in and introduce them.
All right. Well, it's not pulling up. Hang on a minute. What are you on? You on the American?
Yeah. Yep. Same as normal.
Yeah, it ain't showing live yet.
Well, we got people viewing live, so it's on there somewhere.
All right, hang on.
All right, for those of you that are on watching, give us just a few minutes. Ralph's trying to figure out how to share it around, and then we'll get started. I would have done it, Ralph, but Brady forgot to charge my computer.
That's right.
I'm going to blame her. She's not in the car, so I can get away with it.
Yeah.
Travis Sykes says wrong person's trying to do the computer.
Yeah, no kidding.
Jason Bell says, come on, Ralph.
I'm coming. You can go ahead. It'll get there.
All righty. So tonight we're going to talk about improving the odds of recovery. Ralph reached out to me, I guess it was this morning, and said that he wanted to have you on, Mark. Said you had some questions about improving the odds of recovery with hunting season coming up. So if you don't mind, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the Satilla Outdoors.
Thank you. Good to be on with you this evening. My name's Mark Williams. I live in Blackshear, Georgia. I work in Ware County, Waycross. I'm an avid public land hunter, mostly right here in southeast Georgia, but may extend my range a little bit and go a little bit further out. Hunt about 10 to 12 different WMAs per year. And I'm the admin for Satilla Outdoors, which is a Facebook group for hunters and fishermen. Right now, we've got about 13,000 members on there, so we got a pretty wide reach. This is the busy time of the year for that group, and it's going to heat up even more as the deer season comes in here in the next week. And every year, I see people on there asking for a tracking dog, and so I've got a list on there now to try to make it somewhat easier. And I need to put a link to the Blood Trackers Network and trying to get it out for everybody to make it a little bit easier to get a hold of a tracking dog for their particular area when they need one. And I also see a lot of problems and misconceptions that come with having that tracking dog or calling it in. And I was hoping getting on with y'all tonight, maybe we can clear up some confusion, answer some questions that I see, maybe take some other questions from other people, and just make it a little bit more user-friendly for people, especially if they've never done it before, to call in a tracker to help them recover their deer.
Yeah. We have a lot of, obviously our live stream, we do a lot of tracking stuff. So we get a lot of the tracking community, but I believe this is the first one that's originated from the hunting standpoint, the hunter's standpoint. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kenny.
Yes, you're right, Ralph. And it's definitely needed. We have a lot of interest from the trackers, but we do need to get it out there to the hunters and improve recovery odds for the hunters.
Yep. Mark had told me he had a few, you'd said you had some questions already, Mark. So if you want to dive in, and then everybody will start they'll start commenting. We can see them. I don't know if you can, but we can see their comments, and we can start asking questions or answering questions, yours and theirs.
And
Okay, yeah.
I hate to interrupt real quick, but Ralph, if you can, I'm on my phone because I'm traveling back from Iowa. We had an event there, so it's going to be hard for me to see the questions, so I may
Okay.
miss some.
All right.
But sorry to interrupt you, Mark, but go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I just pulled from questions that I see common. Some of them I may already know the answer to, but I'm hoping to learn some stuff myself. But I'm certainly hoping that our listeners will learn a few things. And first thing I want to do is just give you a common scenario that you probably hear every year, multiple times. But, let's just take this Saturday, opening day of archery season for Georgia. I'm sitting up in a stand, and I've got a shot at a buck with my bow. I make a shot. I see the buck run off with my arrow. I wait my typical hour. I get down. I look for blood. I don't see the blood, and of course, I'm not seeing my arrow. So I'll start walking in the direction that the deer ran. I'll go maybe 200 yards. And then I start thinking, you know what, this is going to be tougher than I thought. I hit my deer a little far back. I've lost my arrow. Maybe I better call in a tracker. So at that point, I make a phone call. I call Ralph or one of the other local trackers. At this point, what have I done wrong? What should I have done instead of what I did? And what are you going to want from me when I make that phone call?
So
No.
I'll share a little something. The first thing I'd recommend is before you even go out on that hunt, before season starts, contact the local trackers in your area and get to know them. Find out which ones are reputable. Do some research. That's the first step before you even get to that point. And then I'll get to your answer your question there. But I really want to touch on that because that's not emphasized enough in the hunting community, because tracking has become the cool thing to do. It's real popular. There's a lot of people getting into it, and they're not really training their dogs properly. And we're seeing a big influx of people bringing untrained dogs out there. So that's the important part. And utilizing a network like the Florida Blood Trail Network and the Georgia Blood Trail Network, where we work with teams and we vet the teams, and even if it's a newer team, they're assigned a mentor that will support them along the way. So that would be the first step. And then one thing I would say is if you saw that deer leave with your arrow and you got down and you didn't find sign, I would immediately contact the tracker. And a lot of times, like myself, I would tell you, go ahead and look a little bit. But one thing I want to stress is a dog should not be a last resort. There are cases where a dog should be the first resort, and this is likely one of those. I mean, if you got down, it took off with your arrow, and you didn't see the deer fall. You wait an hour, you don't see sign, and you walk, 50 to 100 yards, you don't see anything. Best thing you can do is back out and get a dog, because humans have to rely on visual sign to track that deer. A dog doesn't. So that's my advice in this situation.
And what you just said, walking the 100 to 200 yards, a wounded deer typically, in my experience, is going to lay down before the 200 yards. So the first sign you see of no sign, or, you get out there and you don't see something, our dogs are going to tell you whether the deer's still living, whether it's mortally wounded. In just a few seconds, we can tell what's going on. And there's I had a seminar this weekend with a bunch of hunters, and that was a question they asked, just like you did. Well, when a deer's going to lay down, and if you've went 200 yards, I will bet you've already pushed the deer. So And you can't tell that. A deer leaves and will be gone before anybody ever hears them. Because, I mean, how many times has a deer gotten under your stand and you never heard it? Well, it's already in high alert when it's hurt. So to me, they're going to get away from you with the first twig breaking. They're going to lay down because they're hurt, but they're going to get up and leave that country if they think something's after them. So that getting to the point to where you feel like there's no sign, that can't be stressed enough to call the tracker in. Because to me, and I tell everybody, to me, that first or our worst enemy is hunters pushing deer. So and it can be, a gut shot's going to lay down really quick, but it takes a long time for them to die. But when you push them, they can leave that country so fast, it's unbelievable. And if you're on a small track or on, as you know, a lot of people hunt edges and property lines, they can get off the property so fast, it's unbelievable. And you never know it. So to me,
so in my scenario, Ralph, I said I got down out of the tree an hour after the shot and started looking, but I know I've shot the deer too far back. How long should we wait before we go after that deer?
We're going to wait 5-6 hours minimum on a gut shot. If you know it's gut shot, we're waiting.
Keep in mind, 5 to 6 hours is in our area at our ambient temperature this time of the year.
Right.
Because we may have some people viewing in northern states, it's going to be a lot longer because ambient temperature plays a big role on a gut shot deer. An hour is sufficient to get down and check the shot site. I would not recommend going past the shot site at an hour. No. And here's why. Often we hear, well, there's coyotes in the area. I get that. Keep in mind, deer live around coyotes all the time. So they know how to coexist with them. So when that deer is hurt and it goes and beds up, it's going to put itself in a position to where it's going to have the wind in its favor, so that it can smell threats coming towards it. And it's going to bed down fairly close, just like Ralph had said. Well, if you go in there and let's say it's within 200, 250 yards, that's a small window for a coyote to stumble across the trail. Well, if you go in there and you bump that deer and now it's ran, say, a half a mile, it may not run that far, but it could. Well, now you just extended that chance of a coyote coming across that trail and catching the scent of that wounded deer and getting to it quicker. So I wanted to hit on that because that's a common thing that we hear from hunters is I don't want the coyotes to get it. The other thing is I don't want my meat to spoil. You have to keep in mind that in order for the meat to spoil, that deer has to expire, that body temperature has to cool down, and then it has to rise again. So if it doesn't die for 6 hours, that clock doesn't start until it's dead, which is typically 4 to 6 hours in our region in this ambient temperature. So there's a lot more time. You have a lot more time than people realize.
Yeah. That was one of the questions I was going to ask was about the meat spoilage. What for a gut shot deer shot at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's going to get up to 90 degrees early bow season. Won't my meat be bad at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
No,
absolutely not.
No,
we got plenty of time.
Yeah, I've tracked just with this dog. I've tracked over 700 tracks with camo. I have yet to have a spoiled deer that we found that we used our wait times. Now, I've had ones where people didn't call me in time and we had to get them the next day or something like that. That wasn't a wait time issue, but using wait times, I've not lost the deer for spoilage. So I would say in my experience, the statistics are in favor of use your wait times. You'll find the deer quicker, and I've just not had that trouble. So I don't worry about about that.
That's been my experience also with shooting deer and having to even wait till early the next morning, shoot them at the last light, and waiting the next morning to find a deer, especially with one shot in the gut. They're not going to die for several hours.
Especially as it gets colder. That can, you can play with that a lot more in the evenings when we get evening shots like that. Once it gets a little later in the year, we'll wait till the next morning if we have that opportunity.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add is over the years, I mean, I've had some where I wouldn't say spoiled, but depending on where you're hunting at, especially cattle property, you know, sometimes I'll go in a little sooner than what I typically would because buzzards get on them fast when you're around a bunch of cows. So there are instances where the tracker may make a decision to go in a little sooner than they typically would. But that decision needs to be left up to the experienced tracker. You know, and I've just last year I had hogs get on one a lot faster than what you'd normally see. But you know, those are very small percentages. I'm talking probably less than 2%. But now if we're around a bunch of cow fields, the buzzards can get on them pretty quick when they expire. So that's why we try to get there. We try to gauge it pretty close to when it expires.
Good answer. That's been my experience too. Is we got more time on our side than what we realize. But I think a lot of people worry about down here in the South Georgia, North Florida heat. We got to get on them and get on them quick. And with the coyotes, that's a good point too. A lot of people worry about that. And
don't get me wrong, Mark. When I said we use wait time, that don't mean hunters will use them. They'll call around to 10 people trying to get them there quick. And a lot of times they'll push them, and you know, a gut shot deer can outrun a pack of hounds. It's not, you know, hurt to the point to where they can't get away. They just hurt inside. So they can leave the country. So
and you know that deer's still alive when you track.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But not all. I'm speaking of my dogs, so I don't want to say every dog. Right. Yeah, mine, I can tell in a few minutes what's going on with them by the way they act. So yeah.
Right. Another question I have: what is what would you say is the probably the number one mistake? And we may have already hit on it, but what's the worst thing I can do as a hunter prior to calling for a tracking dog?
Grid search.
Yeah.
There's an app called the Tracker app, and Shane Simpson gave me some statistics off of that. And last year, off of his data, the amount I think it was only 21% of the deer were recovered after a grid search. That's huge. When just say the national average is around 40%, you know, it's because you're factoring in on that. You're factoring in on lead, and off lead is higher. But when it drops by pretty much 50% after grid searches, that tells you grid search needs to be the last resort, not the first resort.
Yeah.
So what are we doing wrong when we do a grid search? How are we messing the dog up?
Well, two things. You're pushing the deer typically, and you're spreading scent all over the place that we have to work out. And the biggest thing, a lot of hunters lie to us and they say they did not grid search.
Yeah.
And it takes us so much longer, some dogs so much longer to work through that, where if you're just honest, upfront and honest, you can help us get past that point onto some fresh ground and work through that a little quicker.
Mark, we'll get out if we know that. And there's other situations that can fall into a contaminated area situation. If we know that it's contaminated, which spreading scent, grid search, we'll just make a big circle outside of it. If we know we got that, we'll just make a circle. They'll pick it up when it exits that area, and we'll pick it up and and it saves a ton of time. So being honest is one of the things they should always do. We're there. We're going to track it. Just tell us what's going on, because we have multiple options that we can work through problems. And if we know them, if not, we're going to find out if if the hunter's telling us the truth or not, because the dogs, the way they act, our GPSs, they draw pictures for us really quick and easy. And we start looking at things. We know how the tracks usually look and how we progress through a track. And when we see that, we're like, you grid search this. And then they'll come clean, and we'll go, dang, we just wasted 30 minutes on something when we could have just bypassed it and went around it and picked it up when it exited that contaminated area.
Yeah.
So
one thing I want to add, Mark, is, we're not talking about, you having a couple of buddies come out and one standing on last blood and y'all going out, pushing 5 or 10 yards, looking for another spot. We're talking spreading out, fanning out, grid
I've
searching.
had 5 to 7 guys all night long looking for stuff and lie to me. We'll figure it out, but why not just tell us the truth? Because we got ways of handling this stuff. Most good trackers are going to be able to handle that, no problem. Tell us, boom, we're going to go to plan B and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, lying don't help anybody.
No.
It hurts a lot.
Right.
So,
right. Do you need blood to track a dog or track a deer?
no, sir.
No.
Well, you shouldn't, depending on how they've been trained. But the ones that train off of the pheromones, no, we actually don't care about the blood. Blood's for us. We like seeing it, but the dogs don't need it at all. We actually, that kind of helps with the grid search. When they can't see blood, they don't know. Hunters usually will stop when that happens, and that's when we like it, because we know that they didn't progress it too far.
And I want to add to that, Mark. During bow season, you typically have some blood and blood trail, but when it comes time for muzzleloader, please call even if you don't have blood, because too often muzzleloaders do not bleed. Yep. And many times I keep telling people this, and every year I hear someone say, man, I wish I would have called you. I thought I missed because I didn't see any blood, and the deer was dead 80 yards away.
Yep. And would you say a lot of people would shoot back before I got tracking dogs. You didn't see blood, you thought you missed. Don't ever think that. Me and Travis and Jason went on one last year that we got there on a track. And when we showed up at the gate, the guy had the worst look on his face, like something was wrong. I said, man, what's going on? He goes, I just missed a deer of my lifetime. I said, what do you mean you missed him? He said, waiting on y'all. One crossed the road on me and I shot. And I said, well, how do you know you missed? He goes, I didn't see any blood. I don't have any blood. I said, let's go put on it. When we get done with the first one, let's go put it. Shoot, we recovered both of them. He had left that deer so fast it wasn't funny. He was depressed. So we go on a ton of calls just to confirm a miss. Half the time we find the deer.
Yeah, and not just that, especially during rifle season, people take longer shots and they don't realize they think the deer was standing somewhere where it wasn't, and they don't find sign. They think they missed, and if they'd have went another 40 yards, they'd have found the sign.
Yep.
That's right. I've experienced that many times.
Yep. And when we get to it, we are going to cover all the bases when we get there for that reason. We know that a lot of hunters are not very good range finders. They just they're not good at that. And when we miss where they say, we don't just load up and go. We scour the area, and a lot of times that it works out to where they just didn't know the distance, and boom, we pick it up and find it 50 yards in. and they'd have left it.
Does the deer's reaction to the shot tell you anything about the shot?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
You know,
Probably. Go ahead,
If it
Ken.
mule kicks, does it mean something? If it hunches over, does it mean something? If it
so
runs
I
off
want
and
to touch
stops,
on
does it mean something?
a mule kick. You'll hear, oh, it was a heart shot. I've heard all kinds of stuff. A mule kick means nothing more than that deer was startled. It could be a clean miss in mule kick. You know, when you start talking hunched up, you know, that deer's
Yeah.
hit.
Yeah, like the hunches are good.
Yeah.
The mule kick is not to me. Doesn't mean anything. It doesn't excite me or depress me. It just meant the deer jumped because it was startled.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some body reactions does mean stuff like hunched up, tail tucked, all that stuff. And I've even seen it where the tail's up and they're hit. I had a hunter call me I remember it 3 years ago. He said, do you mind coming out? He said, I don't think I hit it because the tail was up and it ran off blowing. We recovered the deer. So don't I tell people don't put as much emphasis on reaction as you think you should, because just like that scenario, most people would say, well, that deer wasn't hit and we recovered it. And many times we go out there in a mule kick and I find they killed the pine tree next to it. So
Right.
I try not to put a lot of emphasis on that, but that's just, you know, my experience. And I don't talk about it a lot to hunters, and maybe I should. I do as far as mule kicks, but I'd rather them call me and go over all the details rather than relying on just reaction.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So, what about rainwater, creeks? Does water help or hurt the tracking process?
Not in my experience.
Water helps.
Yeah.
So the scent particles actually attaches to the water. So moisture is a good thing. Same thing with rain. Hot, dry, real windy conditions. If you have those three, that's tough. You know, I'd rather have the humidity, you know, maybe a light wind, even rain. And I'm talking, I recovered a deer in Fargo. I drove from Perry, Florida to Fargo to track a deer, and I got right to Fargo, and the guy says, "Hey, we're just going to cancel this." He said, "I'm sitting in my truck and I can't see the front of my hood. It's raining so hard." I said, "Look, I've already drove this far. We're trying it." And I pulled up there and it was bad. And we recovered that deer in 10 minutes.
I
That's
don't like
another question. Also, if I call you, I'm sorry, Ralph. If I call you for a track because I felt iffy about the shot and I backed out and I went ahead and called to make it a clean a track as possible, but you tracked the dog or tracked the deer 60 yards and find him dead, did I waste your time?
No,
no, not at all.
not at all. Hey, there's a comment that just came in and said water is good, flowing water not so good. I found a lot of deer
Yeah.
across flowing water. I mean, we man, I've recovered a bunch that crossed major rivers. We recovered one that crossed the Swanee River, and the dogs knew where it entered, and they checked the bank up and down. We do this every year, especially on the Swanee River. They'll check the bank up and down, and they know that deer went into the water. They'll swim across that river, and they'll come out the other side and check the banks up and down and locate where it exited. I mean, if you have experienced dogs, they'll work through even flowing water.
Yeah, they learn that on their own to know to do that. It's just amazing to watch them. But getting back to your point about the wasted time, or did y'all waste our time? You will never, in at least me, you're never going to waste my time. I don't care if it's a miss or whatever. We do it for other reasons. It ain't just, we only want the ones we can recover. That's just ludicrous to think that's going to happen first thing, but you never do. Main reason we recover enough where people think they've missed, and we let us come out and look, and we find the deer. So it just works out that way. We never think people waste our time. It never is. We got another thing. We got puppies that we're always working to. Most people, young dogs, shoot easy tracks. Man, there's nothing better for puppies and stuff like that. And if it's a 50-yarder, we might say, hey, let us run back and get a puppy, and we'll put a puppy on it next. So you're never going to waste it. Right. There's always some good stuff that we get out of tracks. It just never think that, because we don't think that.
No, and even every track is good experience. Even a clean miss, in my opinion, is good experience for the hunter, the handler, and the dog. I don't even turn down when I'm very confident it's a clean miss, I'm still going, because it gives the opportunity to educate the hunter. It still gets your dog some exposure in the woods, and the big thing is educating the hunters about what we do.
Right. Right. Do you want to go ahead?
No, I was just going, one more thing on that. I always say in training, watching a dog when it's not on the track is just as important as watching the dog when it is on the track. Those times when it gets off and back on or never get on, you got to know what that dog's doing. You need to know what that dog looks like and what his mannerisms are when it's not on the track. So you might not find your deer, but we're learning stuff. My dog's telling me things every single time it gets out. So I look at everything that way, but that's one of the things I just love is reading dogs. So that's all stuff that we just look for and enjoy doing. So, but
what about drones?
So I can touch on this. I do have a thermal drone. They do have their place, but I will tell you that my drone will not find a deer that my dog cannot find, with the exception of one thing: a property line. You can fly over a property line and not require permission, but you still have to have permission to go on that property and get that deer. But a well-trained dog will find any deer that a drone can find. So now another good area for a drone, let's say it goes into a gator infested area and gets up on an island, you don't want to send a dog in there. That's a good place to use a drone.
Right.
But don't think that they're superior.
That'd be on the right side of 177 going to the swamp.
Ralph, I remember a scenario where me and you and a buddy was waist deep in marshland too, and we was worried about.
Oh yeah, yes sir.
We was worried about them gators.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would have been a good place for a drone there. Just to find a dog. Yeah. You may or may not want to touch on this. I know it can be controversial, and you'll get people will disagree with you, and it's fine with me if you pass on it, and I understand. But what about different weapons, whether it's a fixed head broadhead versus a mechanical broadhead, or different types of caliber rifles, a 6.5 Creedmoor versus a 30-06, a certain type of muzzleloader bullet versus another type? Do you have any comments, experience that would be helpful to people out there who's, maybe they don't have the best caliber, or it changes the way that you will go about looking for a deer?
So I will gladly touch on this. I actually just spoke on this 2 weeks ago in Pennsylvania and this past weekend in Iowa, especially the expandable versus fixed blade. So again, Shane Simpson shared some good statistics in it, and I verified it through my years of statistics, and they were pretty close. The odds of recovery are significantly higher with a pass-through. I'm talking about 20%, which is pretty significant when you're looking at a large scale. Now, when you look at expandables or mechanicals versus fixed blades, there was 31% more fixed blades pass through than mechanicals. And even so, I mean, and it's about the same with compound bows or crossbows. So when you're talking a higher percentage of recoveries with pass-throughs versus non-pass-throughs, and you have higher odds of pass-through with a fixed blade, statistics tell me shoot a fixed blade. Now, talking about muzzle loaders, it's been my experience. Power belts seem to be the worst. And I know
That's
a lot
been
of
my
people.
experience as well.
Yeah, and I've actually got a picture, and I can share this later on the post, where we went in on a deer. It was still alive. The hunter had a 200. I'm trying to remember what it was. 250 grain. No, it was it was like a 280 or 300 grain power belt. 150 grains of powder. We dispatched the deer at 15 yards away, and it did not pass through. You could see it bulging out. You know, and they don't bleed. Probably the best muzzleloader bullets that I've experienced have been the Hornady and the Barnes.
Yeah.
Now,
I've
when it
had a
comes
lot
to
better
rifles,
success myself with a Hornady versus the power belts. I changed from the power belts to the Hornadies, and it's made a difference in the pass-throughs.
yeah. Now, when it comes to rifles, you know, you're going to hear all kinds of different things. I can tell you, probably the most that I track are 6.5 Trackmores. And I'm joking on that. A lot of that's because it's popular, you know. And same thing with broadheads. A lot of it I track more rage than anything, but it's also the popularity. But I do want to say 6.5 is a big one, and most of the time it's the bullet choice that they're making. You know, trying to shoot match grade and all this. But your smaller calibers, your 223s, your 243s, even a big one, it's kind of fizzled out, but for about 2 or 3 years there, the 300 blackouts, because they were shooting subsonic rounds and just wasn't passing through good, and you know, not getting a good blood trail. But by far, it's been the 6.5s, the 243s, the 223s. But at the end of the day, shot placement is key. Proper ammo selection is key. But you're still those smaller bullets. You're gonna have a harder time with blood trails. But I do want to say I track a lot of big calibers, like 300 Win mags, 7 mags, and same thing. And the same scenario applies with 2.5 inch cut broadheads. People think because they have a bigger caliber, a bigger cut broadhead, they have a larger margin of error, and that couldn't be more wrong. It's still shot placement is key.
Right.
I think with the bows and the crossbows, I think people have gotten away from the kinetic energy part of the shot versus they went to speed. And I think that totally has changed, and we track a lot of things because it's just not doing the damage that it needs to do, is what I think. Now, and the small bullets, the small calibers, I think I find a lot of those deer. They just don't bleed, and people can't track them as good on their own. And we find them, but we get a ton of calls off of the small, probably 243 to me, and the 6.5 is what we see the most of when we.
Yeah, and I want to add something on the broadhead. Something that's not talked about a lot that was years ago is keeping them sharp.
Oh yeah.
What about payment? I know most trackers, my understanding, work off tips. I don't typically carry around $100 cash on me. But when I call for a tracker, then I'm scrambling to make sure I have enough tip money. Do you guys or most other trackers accept things like Venmo and Cash App? Or do we need to be hitting our buddies up for some money, or keep some cash in our glove compartment, or make a run for the ATM? What's your suggestion on that?
We, like me and a lot of the trackers that I know, we all do the Cash App, the Venmo, PayPal, but and that gets every year that gets more popular.
Right.
So I'm not saying everybody does, but everybody I talk to, they get that, and they've called back and just rave over me telling them to do that. They just tickled to death because it's meant that people, they can tip them better and more often. So
right.
Yeah,
that is
I want to
helpful
add to
because
that.
a lot of times, like for me, I may only have $5 or $10 cash on me.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden I'm in need of some respectable tip money, and so being able to pay wirelessly like that is a big plus.
Yeah, and I
So
want
that's
to add
good
to
to hear.
that. We do have a lot of people on here from all over the country watching. Although in our area, we're most of us are tip based. Other parts of the country and even other parts of especially Georgia, some people do charge.
Yeah.
And I'm not against charging. We do have a lot of expense involved. I personally do not charge. But I do understand that for some people they charge, and so that's something else you will find out as you reach out to the trackers before season and get to know which ones charge, which ones don't, so you know what to expect, and you're not waiting until the last minute and then you're stuck, especially if you travel out of state.
Right.
Hang on, Kenny. I want to mention some people are thinking that we're not answering questions off of them commenting. Guys, we're with Mark tonight. Mark's worried that he's going to get a call because he's an EMT, and so we're trying to get Mark's questions in as much as we can, just in case he gets a call and has to leave, and then we'll hit y'all's comments if he has to go. Once he gets done with his questions, we're going to hit y'all's comments anyway.
Thank you. I've only got a couple more questions. One of them I think you've already answered in the beginning, but Ralph, I have your number. I have it saved in my phone. I give you a call Saturday. I need you to come help me with a deer, and lo and behold, I'm like 6 on your list. Do I have to start over trying to find somebody, or are you going to lead me in the right direction, or point me in a place that I can go and find a tracker when you can't do it?
Well, the can't do it part usually doesn't happen. It's to me, the hunter's anxiety of wanting to get somebody out there quick is what causes the issue. We're going to get you, and we're going to talk over the situation. Sometimes we can shuffle some things based off of location or where you're at, but also we've got tons of people that there's 3 or 4 of us that we stay in contact every minute of every day during tracking season. And we might have, one of those guys over near you, and we'll flip flop tracks, and I'll go on one of his and he'll go on mine because of location. We're going to get you handled. And so that part is not a problem. And I hate to say it, but a lot of the hunters just don't trust our judgment on time, and they're worried about things. I don't know how to solve that sometimes, but we're going to get you. I've ran so many 24-hour nights or days that it's just the way tracking is. We don't go home. If I'll stop and sleep for 30 minutes somewhere and get back up and keep going. So we're going.
I want to touch on this too, Ralph, because your question about being sixth in line, Ralph, I think one thing you may have missed is I can tell you people like myself and Ralph and other people, we're not out there stacking tracks to be greedy. There are people out there that does stack tracks to be greedy, and then they overcommit themselves and they don't show up. So again, getting to know your trackers is key. And we made some moves a few years ago in Florida, and this year we're implementing it in Georgia, to where we have actually we've I don't want to say developed. We've inherited or borrowed a process that Alabama's been using, where we have a point system that basically ranks these trackers, and it's how we structure our list for each county. And your more experienced trackers move up to the top of the list. Well, typically those are the busiest trackers, and they really don't need the phone calls from the list because they have a reputation. But the reason we do that is because those are the people that are more likely to refer those tracks out to the right teams, and that's what's crucial. So sometimes maybe we don't refer it out and we do leave you sixth on the list, and it's not because we're greedy or we're stacking tracks. It might be because we know that we're the best team for that situation. So it's always good to talk through that. And if at any point you feel like you're going to be neglected, just be honest and tell the tracker. Don't just go calling around. Just say, hey, I am concerned. Here's my concerns. And a good tracker will explain what's going on. And like Ralph said, we talk to other trackers all day, every day.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate it. That's all the questions I have. I'm going to go ahead and log out so you can attend to some of these other questions and continue the conversation. I'm going to continue to watch as a viewer, but I appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions. I hope it gives some of these hunters an idea what to expect when they need a dog and when they should call for a tracker versus waiting to they get 6 buddies out there to grid search and then decide, hey, we need a tracker. So it's been very helpful, and I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, Mark. Appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
You, Mark.
Y'all have a great season.
You
Thank
too.
You too.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
All right, Kenny. Hang on a minute. Let me get down here. Now, I don't have the option of placing it on the screen because I'm not the host, I don't think.
Right.
So
if you tell me which one I might be able to go through, it's got it so small on my screen, it's hard to. But that's all right. You can just read it and we can go from there.
Yeah, I'm reading. Oh, we got one guy from the UK.
I saw that earlier.
Hey, Carl. Glad you came on.
He said the thought, I'm going to put it here. He said the thought of hunting and providing meat for my family sounds amazing. UK is so stupid with laws, etc. And that is a shame. But honestly, if we're not careful, it can happen here. So be smart about, especially on social media. Be smart about the stuff you're putting on social media, especially trackers. I have put some stuff in the past that shouldn't have been on there. I'll admit that. You won't find that stuff now.
Yeah.
So here's one from Lee.
Yeah.
It says, what is the average cost to track? It's different all throughout the country. I'm tips based. Whatever you can afford to give. If you can't afford to give anything, I'm still going to come. But I would
Yep.
say the average tip is probably around $150 in our area.
I would say the same thing.
Here's one that says, interesting comment. A dog will tell you if the deer is still alive. I've been tracking about 5 to 6 years with Lacey's. My main dog, Trad, will look at me as if to say, Daddy, I can do this all day, but this deer ain't dead. It's odd that I can't read all of it, but I know where he's getting out there. And that's something I want to touch on. And I said this in Iowa this weekend. When you're first starting out, you want to please the hunters. You want to go the extra mile, and you'll spend 2, 3, 4+ hours on a track that your dog's telling you you're not getting that deer. And I want to give a piece of advice that maybe will help some of you guys. And I guess it was about 4 years ago now, Kim Long came to our camp, and we were sitting around the campfire. She said, I just got to ask you a question. She said, how do you not spend 2 to 3+ hours on a track that is not fatal? I said, it's real simple. I'm upfront and honest with them before I even go on the track. I tell them, hey, this is where I believe this was hit, and this is what I believe the odds of recovery are. This is the signs that my dog gives when the deer is still alive. And I found if I put all of that out there up front, when it comes time to make that call, I don't get as much pushback from the hunters as I used to.
Yep. It's amazing when you can lay down the scenario before it ever happens, and then when it starts happening just the way you said it, they gain confidence in what you told them.
Right.
I'm trying to read through some of these myself.
Yeah, it's my computer was dead, so I'm on the phone, and the way this is, I can't hardly. I did see one earlier on Scott about the flowing water, and Scott, you are right. If it dies in the river and washes down river, it can be missed at times. But I have also seen my dogs work flowing creeks and somehow find the deer. And my only explanation is most of the time you'll see them ping ponging back and forth from bank to bank, and my only explanation is they're picking up that scent from the oils on the hide that collects on the edge of the banks and works it out. But obviously that's not all the time.
Jason Bell was talking. He said, talk about the back whack or no man's land.
So the typical reaction from a back whack is that the deer will drop, and sometimes it'll lay there stiff as a board like you killed it stone dead, and you set the gun down, and next thing you know, that deer gets up and leaves. All you did was shock that spine and temporarily paralyze it. If you shoot a deer and it drops in its tracks, you better be ready to put another one in it. Even if you did kill it stone dead, you better be ready to put another one in it. As far as no man's land is above the spine. And some people's going to argue that. They're going to say, "Oh, there's a void, this and that." You can argue it all you want. You're never going to make me believe that. I've seen it. I mean, it's been proven time and time again that there is no void.
Yep. All right. Hang on.
So Jason Bell says, touch on ballistic tips. personally, I don't have an issue with ballistic tips, but I will tell you they expand rapidly. So you may not have as much of a blood trail in some cases.
I think shot placement is the key. That's number one to me.
Right.
But also, I think there are better bullets than others, and I think some people use terrible projectiles that they need to use things that expand better and just have more knockdown power.
Yep.
Even small calibers are that way. There again, I think speed is like becoming the biggest thing on this earth for people, and that's not the way to do it.
Right. Gene Ferris said, and this is my view on ballistic tips too. With a bullet not passing through is the best. That means that the animal took all the energy that the bullet had to offer, and that's something a lot of people misses. You know, they want that pass through, so it's bleeding out of both sides. But you know, I like that energy, and there's some bullets out there. I'll tell you that I've shot deer with, especially at longer ranges. If you don't have the proper bullet and you have them fragment, you're in a world of mess. And I have had that happen.
Yeah, and bigger the bullet doesn't. That's not always good. We had one last year. It was a 300, it was a 300. It did not pass through. We couldn't believe it.
Right.
Either. So you just got to have the right setup. But shot placement to me is everything.
Yep. Michael Pritt says, I don't ever use broadheads. It's just not worth it. I'll save a good used broadhead for a hog, or I'm the same way. It's not worth it. You need a good sharp broadhead. I mean, you can reuse components, just not the blades, or at least sharpen them.
Yeah. And we had one. Dang it. Yeah, Gene also said, I hate when trackers post videos. Sure, we all see it, but we don't need to post it. That's what's going to get us in trouble.
Yep. Me and you saw that one at the same time.
Yep. Travis.
So this is one we need to put up there, that from Travis Sykes.
Yep, I was just reading it.
Yeah, go if you want, go ahead and read it.
He said, I can also say another problem tracking is when you're letting your dog work the hunter, or the hunters try to keep looking for blood, getting ahead of the dog. Yeah, that don't happen very much.
Yeah, we can't stress that enough. You have got to control the track.
Yeah.
The tracker has to control the track. And I'll tell you, I've gotten a little more impatient over the years with people like that. And I'll finally just tell them, hey, you keep getting in between me and the dog, and we're leaving.
Yep. Another problem is after you've called us, and me and Travis talk about this all the time. We went on one last year, and I've mentioned it on these live streams. Called us, we get there, and 8 hunters or 8 people come out of the woods when we pulled up. And we just went, holy crap, knowing they were out there just searching.
Yep.
After they called us, not before, after, until we got there. And it was just unbelievable. It's probably about as mad as I've ever been. And I don't get mad much, but I was hot.
Oh, yeah, I've had it happen too. Laura Rogers said, I had a hunter last year even flip the deer over, come back an hour later, and it was gone. I've experienced that myself. Yeah, Mike Maynard says, it seems like back whack is one of the hardest things for hunters to understand. Every year we tell people, and every year we have to keep telling them.
Yep.
Mitchell Smith said the bullet shortage a couple of years ago caused folks to buy anything they could find, not the best they can find. I agree, but even then, before then and after then, people keep buying junk.
Yeah.
Jason Bell says neck shots. Neck shots.
Woo. Ooh.
I spoke about this in Pennsylvania and in Iowa. I hear so many people say, "Oh, I shoot him in the neck all the time." It's just a matter of time before you lose one.
Yep.
It's not if, it's when.
Yep.
And when you miss that spine and it doesn't drop in its tracks, you better hope it's below the spine or you're not getting it.
Yep. Yeah, I had that question asked at that seminar I went to this weekend. They asked about frontal shots, and I said, well, the percentage is not good. You got about a 2-inch window to hit it, and if you don't, you're just hitting muscle. I said, as far as a frontal neck shot, I said, if you're dead on, it's it'll work, but that's not a good percentage shot because most people can't shoot that good to zero in on that.
Right. And this one right here where Scott asked if he quit asking if deer was quartered or broadside, half the time the hunter ends up wrong. And not just that anymore. Well, not anymore. It seems like every time you ask where they hit it at, behind the shoulder. You see every year you see these little charts where do you think you shot at? E7, E4, FC, this, that. I don't even ask that anymore. I ask if it's archery season, hey, what color's the blood? Well, anytime I ask what color the blood is, do you smell any guts? That stuff means more to me than where do you think you hit it at? Because they're almost always wrong.
Drop down a couple of comments to John Melton.
You're gonna have to read it because there's so many. I'm struggling here.
The one that you just said from Scott Eccles, drop down 2 below him.
I don't see it. You're just gonna have to read it because I don't see it.
Yes, please elaborate on why not to post videos. I would think it would promote the use of and efficiency of a dog.
It's not about posting videos, it's what you post. The type of videos you post.
Because a lot of times, John, you got to be careful. Some states don't allow if you're supposed to be on lead and you're baying and catching something, you got to be careful with that.
Well, not just about what states, Ralph. It's people don't want to see that, especially animal rights activists and all that.
Yeah, we try to monitor who gets in the group, but we can't catch everybody. And it'll start, even if it is legal, too much of it will start making the politicians start to tighten up on what we can do and can't do. Even though it might be the most efficient, they're going to get heat from it, and they're not going to allow us to keep doing stuff. So it's better not to post the stuff that's going to get in the wrong hands, and it's going to cut off some of our abilities out there and the rules that we have to abide by.
So here's one I want to respond to. It's Ruth Outdoor says, hey guys, new here. I have a red bone and she is 5 months. I've been training her to track deer only. If someone asked me to track a bear or a hog, would that mess with her deer tracking skills? Thanks in advance. You're gonna get mixed opinions on this. I personally am not a fan of tracking hogs and deer. Now I will track some exotics with my dogs. Sometimes it can mess with them because they end up liking the action of one or the other. But if you do the proper training, you can have a multi-purpose dog. I personally don't think it's the best route to go, but that's everyone's own opinion there.
My only, yeah, I can see where dogs could do it. My problem, my dogs are gritty enough. I'm scared to put them in there on something that could hurt them. Even though a deer can, they got there's different levels of a bear or a hog than it is to a deer to me. And I'm not going to put them in there on it. I know that's not the question she asked, but that's why I don't even try that stuff.
But there is a lot of people that tracks bows or
yeah.
multiple, but I have seen it ruin some dogs. But again, a lot of that's in the training as well. James McDonald says, please escalate or let folks know that the deer is not theirs until you take your dog off the deer. My dog is adamant he's 1,000% after what he believes is his until I get to cheer him or pet him and congratulate him that deer is his. And honestly, that's the tracker's responsibility. It should go over that before they even start. And
Absolutely.
again, reiterate that when you get it up to the deer. Travis Apple says people will spend money on bow or gun, but run to Wally World for a projectile or arrow and broadhead. The arrow kills, not the bow. The bullet kills, not the gun.
Good point.
Kyle Carlson says, what do you tell hunters when they say we have been looking for the deer for an hour or so, we can't find it, and they can't tell you exactly how far they have looked? I tell them back out and I'm on my way.
Yep.
TR Pate says it's crazy the front shots, how many run the rib cage. Absolutely, frontal shots are terrible. More times than not, it just skims, it grazes down the side.
Yep. Or blows the shoulder out.
Jason Bell says, the question I get, if the only shot I have is a gut shot, should I take it? I will never tell someone to take a gut shot on intentionally. I feel it's unethical, and I like to promote ethical shots. But I will tell you, we'll recover that deer if you don't push it.
Oh yeah.
So Travis says, I use chart to ask if it's on the right side or left side entrance to get an idea if it's possible liver or gut, assuming an angled shot. Travis, I've been there, done that. I throw the charts away because 9 times out of 10, it's wrong.
Yep. I've had guys be freaking 18 inches off from what they just knew was the shot. Get there and go, boy, that ain't very, very close.
Yeah. Well, Ralph, we're going to be on live tomorrow night, so you guys hop back on, and let's save some of this stuff for tomorrow night.
All right.
I'm glad that Mark came on today from a hunter's perspective, and we will do this more often. So if any of you are watching this and you want to come on, just let us know, whether you're a hunter, a tracker. If you have questions, you can email us. You can email me, Kenny, at AmericanBloodTrackers.org or Ralph at AmericanBloodTrackers.org. You can send us a message on Facebook. Last week I had people texting me and private messaging me with anonymous questions because they were concerned about their name being brought up for some of the questions. Trust me, we're not going to say who it is. You can go back and listen or watch last week's live stream. You will see it was never mentioned, and we will help you in any way that we can. Ralph, you know as well as I do, we're just out here trying to help the tracking community, trying to help the hunting community. We're not asking for anything out of this other than spreading the word.
Yeah. Let me answer one person real quick. Inside joke. Derek, you're on your own.
Yeah. So Mitchell said, can you discuss the difference between gut and intestinal. Mitchell, tune back in tomorrow and we will touch on that because that is a hot topic. It's something that was brought up in Iowa, and we're going to leave you hanging on that one so we can get you back tomorrow.